Good morning and welcome to Daybreak. I'm your host Nadia Johnny and I'll be taking you through the day's top stories. Here are the headlines. Japan stock market surges after Sanai Takaichi's landslide win. Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai is sentenced to 20 years in prison. And 9 people have been killed and several injured after building collapse in Lebanon. Our top story this morning, Japan stocks have surged to a record high after a snap election produced a landslide win for Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's Liberal Democrat Party. It won 316 of 465 seats on Sunday. The result has implications for her economic policy, financial markets and Japan's security posture. Here is more.
Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi coalition has won an historic landslide in Sunday's snap election, securing one of the strongest mandates in the country's post-war history. She delivered 316 seats of the 465 in Parliament's lower house for her Liberal Democratic Party, its best ever result. The win gives the party about 68% of the chamber. It is the first time a single party has achieved a two-thirds majority in Japan's lower house. Japanese media have described the result as an historic victory. The victory paves the way for promised tax cuts that have spooked financial markets and military spending aimed at countering China, a strong stance that has strained ties with her powerful neighbour. However, the main concerns with voters are rising living costs and sluggish economic growth.
I do support the Liberal Democratic Party, but I do have some concerns about them winning too much. For the government going forward, I hope they tighten their discipline, don't get complacent, and run the administration without any looseness.
I think it's a good thing that people who value Japan were elected. Her popularity was part of it.
Takaichi became Prime Minister in October after taking over leadership of the LDP, becoming the first female leader in the country. She called the snap vote to seek a clear mandate after the party lost its parliamentary majority under her predecessors. Financial markets reacted sharply to the result. Japanese stocks surged to record highs while government bonds fell. The Nikkei 225 rose as much as 4.2% during trading, hitting an all-time high. The broader Topix index also climbed to a record level.
Now let's take a look at the story shaping the day, and we head firstly over to our A News website and what has happened over in Lebanon. Several dead and missing after a building collapsed there in the city of Tripoli is what information states. On Sunday it happened, and they say that more are still trapped under the rubble, as what you can see in these pictures that we're just showing you right now. Now this building actually consisted of 2 blocks, each containing 6 apartments. And the head of Lebanon's Civil Service Rescue Service team said the collapsed building had 22 residents. What we know so far is that the current death toll is around 9 people, and a number of people are seriously injured, but rescue teams are still looking for survivors. It was also stated that thousands of people in Tripoli are threatened due to the state of neglect over a number of buildings. And the Lebanese President Joseph Aoun ordered all emergency services to be on high alert to assist in rescue operations and provide shelter to residents of neighbouring buildings. So we'll provide you with more information as that continues. The search and rescue teams continue to try and find people and grab them out of the rubble. Right now, the death toll is 9 people currently, but throughout the day we'll definitely provide you with more of an update. That's also on our rescue team on AP Associated Press website. Rescue teams search for survivors in building collapse that killed at least 9 in northern Lebanon, as I just mentioned. And as you can see, quite a bit of destruction here. We're not entirely sure as to what caused the collapse, but we do know that it has had a severe impact on those who were living in those two apartment blocks. Okay, now we'll go to our next story making headlines, and that's on CNN's website, and it's Hong Kong's Jimmy Lai sentenced to 20 years in prison after landmark national security trial. So what we know about this is that he was sentenced within the last hour or so, and it was on 3 security charges comprising of 2 counts of conspiracy to collide with foreign forces and 1 of publishing seditious materials. The 78-year-old denied all charges against him, saying in the court he was a political prisoner facing persecution from Beijing. The Hong Kong court said that Lai's sentence was in the most severe penalty band for offences of a grave nature, and that it was enhanced by him being the mastermind and driving forces behind foreign collusion and conspiracies. Now, there's been a lot of response to his actual sentencing. We have a response from the Committee to Protect Journalism. One of them said the rule of law has been completely shattered in Hong Kong. Today's egregious decision is a final nail in the coffin for freedom of press in Hong Kong. And we also have another response from the Human Rights Watch team, and that said the harsh 20-year sentence against the 78-year-old is effectively a death sentence of this, and a sentence of this magnitude is both cruel and profoundly unjust. So that's what the response has been since then. Now, we know that he was actually a founder of a now defunct pro-democracy newspaper called the Apple Daily, and he was arrested in August 2020 after China imposed a national security law following massive anti-government protests in Hong Kong. His particular arrest and sentencing has been criticised by world leaders, including US President Donald Trump and UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer as well. Right, we will go over to the next story making headlines, and that is on the BBC website, and that's talking about the Iranian Nobel laureate handed further prison sentence, lawyers said. So she has been given 7.5 years by the Iranian court. Her lawyer said that she is a human rights activist and was sentenced to 6 years for gathering and collusion and 1.5 years for propaganda activities by a court in the northeastern city of Mashdad, and it was announced on social media on Sunday. Now, Mohammed Amdi was arrested in December for making provocative remarks at a memorial ceremony, Iranian authorities said at the time, and her family said that she was then taken to hospital after being beaten during the arrest. The 53-year-old was made laureate in 2023 for activism against the oppression of women in Iran, and has been also handed a 2-year ban on leaving the country and 2 years of exile in eastern Kufs region. So that's information that's just come out, and we'll provide you with any further details in regards to that. The Nargis Foundation, which supports her, has described her actual hearing on Saturday as a sham and explained that she had begun a hunger strike on the 2nd of February. Okay, well, that is your global stories, your global headlines right now. We're going to go to a quick break. When I return, I'll provide you with the rest of the stories making headlines this morning. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's take a look at the rest of the global stories this morning. And firstly, it wasn't just Japan who went to the polls over the weekend. Over in Portugal, 11 million people were eligible to cast their ballots in the presidential election. The vote ended with a clear victory for socialist candidate Antonio José Seguro, who defeated the far-right challenger in the second round.
Antonio José Seguro of the centre-left Socialist Party won the second round of the presidential election in Portugal on Sunday. With 99% of ballots counted, Seguro had won 66.7% of votes to secure a 5-year term. The 63-year-old cast himself as the candidate of a modern and moderate left who can actively mediate to avert political crises and defend democratic values.
With a great part of our country, Europe and the world against us,
with Brussels against us, with everyone against us. We got the best result ever. We did not win, but we are on our way to victory.
Deixámos de ser adversários e temos agora o dever partilhado.
Seguro saw off a challenge from the far-right populist Chega Party's André Ventura, who won 33.3% of the vote. Despite his loss, André Ventura said on Sunday that his anti-establishment movement is on its way to victory.
Não vencemos e isso deve significar.
With a great part of our country, Europe and the world against us, with Brussels against us, with everyone against us, we got the best result ever. We did not win, but we are on our way to victory.
Este movimento, este partido, esta força.
In Portugal, the new president will succeed outgoing conservative Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa in early March. Portugal's presidency is a largely ceremonial role, but holds some key powers, including the ability to dissolve parliament and block legislation under certain circumstances.
A Hong Kong court has sentenced prominent media tycoon Jimmy Lai to 20 years in prison. The sentencing follows Lai's conviction on national security charges comprising of 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and 1 of publishing seditious materials. Here's more.
Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai has been sentenced to a total of 20 years in jail on 3 charges. These comprise of 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and 1 count of publishing seditious materials. The 78-year-old self-made billionaire is among the highest-profile government critics to be charged since Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law on the semi-autonomous southern city in 2020. He was first arrested in August that year. Lai, also a British citizen and founder of the now-closed Apple Daily newspaper, was convicted on the 15th of December last year on all 3 counts. He denies all charges. He told the court he is a political prisoner facing persecution from Beijing. The sentence is likely to galvanise international calls for the media mogul's release in a landmark trial closely watched by Western leaders, including US President Donald Trump, who previously vowed to get him out. Supporters of the Hong Kong democracy activist queued outside the court in hopes of catching a last glimpse of Lai as he arrived for sentencing.
I started queuing at 8 p.m. last Thursday. I just wish to greet Mr. Lai in person in court. That's all I ask for because I think it will be the last time I see him.
2 years of Lai's sentence will overlap with his existing prison term, meaning he will serve an additional 18 years. However, he will not be eligible for parole until he is in his late 90s. Both Beijing and Hong Kong's government have repeatedly rejected international criticism of Lai's prosecution and dismissed accusations that his jailing was politically motivated.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has decided that... Oh, just one moment, I do apologise. I've got the wrong information up. Just bear with me one moment. And we head over to Israel now, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will travel to the US this week for talks with US President Donald Trump, focused on Iran, his office said. The meeting is scheduled for Wednesday and comes as the United States and Iran held 2 rounds of indirect talks in Oman on Friday. Netanyahu's office said any agreement must include limits on Iran's ballistic missile program and an end to Tehran's support for regional armed groups. The White House has not commented on the meeting.
You say Iran is so weak. I appreciate you saying that.
Newly released documents from the US justice system showed that convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein cultivated contacts with senior Russian officials and prominent business figures. That's according to reporting by the Washington Post. Also, latest development from the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's chief of staff resigned after saying he takes responsibility for Peter Mandelson's appointment as ambassador to the US. Here's more.
Recently published Epstein files expand the known scope of the convicted sex offenders international network, revealing direct correspondence with several high-profile Russian figures. The documents also show that Epstein spent years trying to arrange a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to the records, Epstein regularly met with Russia's former ambassador to the United Nations, Vitaly Churkin, in New York. The files also indicate that he communicated with Thorbjørn Jagland, the former Norwegian Prime Minister, who was serving as Secretary General of the Council of Europe in 2018. In an email written in June that year, Epstein suggested that Jagland help facilitate introductions to Russian officials. Jagland replied that he would raise the matter with an assistant to Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The release of the documents has triggered an official investigation and a strong response from Moscow. While not directly addressing the new revelations, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said the Epstein case exposed what she described as widespread corruption among Western elites and alleged conspiracies among powerful figures across governments and international institutions. The Epstein files are also having political repercussions in the United Kingdom. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, resigned on Sunday amid pressure over Starmer's decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States. McSweeney said he had been closely involved in the appointment. Starmer is now facing his most serious political crisis since taking office, after documents detailed Mandelson's past connections to Epstein.
More than 30 Venezuelan opposition figures were freed from prison on Sunday. This comes amid an announcement by the country's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, of a proposed amnesty law.
Venezuela has freed several prominent opposition figures from prison on Sunday. It's after mounting pressure from the US to release political prisoners. Among those freed at the weekend were opposition politicians Juan Pablo Guanipa and Freddy Superlano, along with prominent lawyer Perkins Rocha. The release marks the latest high-profile releases by the government in Caracas. Juan Pablo Guanipa, a close ally of Nobel Peace Prize laureate Maria Corina Machado, was arrested in May 2025 after months in hiding, accused of leading a terrorist plot. His family and the political movement have categorically denied the allegations. Guanipa said reconciliation in Venezuela must be based on truth and called for the release of all political prisoners.
Let's review what has happened in all these years in our country, where respect for the will and sovereignty of the Venezuelan people has been. And from there, let's establish a new political process in Venezuela where the rules of the game are respected, where whoever does not respect the rules faces the corresponding sanction, and where the will and sovereignty of the Venezuelan people are respected, which without a doubt are quite clear at this moment.
The non-governmental organization Foro Penal confirmed the release of 35 Venezuelan politicians at the weekend and said it is continuing to verify additional cases. The NGO previously confirmed that 383 political prisoners had been let go since the Venezuelan government announced on the 8th of January that it would begin a new series of releases. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez also announced a proposed amnesty law covering hundreds of prisoners across the country. Venezuela's opposition and human rights groups have long accused the country's socialist government of using detentions to suppress dissent. The government, however, denies holding political prisoners and maintains that those jailed have committed crimes.
Now, turning to one of the most anticipated US sports events this year, the Super Bowl. And if you are just tuning in, we have the results. So the Seahawks have beaten the New England Patriots 29-13 for their second Super Bowl win. Now, alongside this, Puerto Rican rapper Bad Bunny also delivered his halftime performance with hit songs and a few surprise celebrity appearances. The Grammy winner highlighted his Puerto Rican roots, marking a spectacular moment for Latin music on America's biggest stage, while Lady Gaga and Ricky Martin graced the stage to join the 31-year-old. But not everyone was excited to see his performance after facing criticism from US President Donald Trump and other conservatives over his outspoken criticism of US immigration policy. What a performance that was. Now we're going to take a quick break. Make sure you stay with us for further news. Welcome back and thank you for joining me this morning. Now, here are the top stories happening across the region. We head firstly over to Lebanon, where a multi-storey apartment building collapsed on Sunday in the northern city of Tripoli, killing at least half a dozen people. The incident has raised concerns about unsafe housing in the area. Rescue teams continue to work at the site, with authorities warning that many buildings remain at risk.
Rescue teams continue to search for 8 people believed to be missing after a multi-storey apartment building collapsed in the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli on Sunday. At least 9 people have been killed and dozens injured. 6 people have been rescued from the rubble so far. Civil Defense Director General Imad Kreish said the building was made up of 2 blocks, each containing 6 apartments. He said 22 people were inside at the time of the collapse. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun ordered all emergency services to remain on high alert. He also instructed authorities to provide shelter for residents of nearby buildings. The collapse comes just weeks after another deadly building disaster in Tripoli. In January, the head of the Higher Relief Authority, Bassam Nablusi, said Tripoli municipality records showed that 105 buildings needed immediate evacuation warnings. Lebanon has many derelict buildings, with some occupied structures in serious disrepair. Many were built illegally during the 1975 to 1990 civil war, while others had extra floors added without permits.
Armenia's foreign ministry held a meeting chaired by Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan to review foreign policy results for 2025. That's according to Armenia media. Foreign Minister Ararat Mirziyan said Armenia continued efforts to advance peace with Azerbaijan, including work on a peace treaty and confidence-building measures. Officials also discussed ties with Turkey, the US, the EU, and regional partners like Georgia and Iran. Azerbaijan and Turkey have discussed allied cooperation, regional security and the Azerbaijan-Armenia normalization process during a telephone conversation between their foreign ministers. Azerbaijan's foreign ministry said. Foreign ministers Ceyhun Bamarov and Hakan Fidan also exchanged views on developments in the Middle East, coordination in international organizations and other issues of mutual interest. In a recent cabinet session, the Armenian government reviewed a broad range of issues, including a new phase of relations with Azerbaijan, along with a broader push to make the Armenia market more attractive and the early stages of infrastructure planning linked to the anticipated trip route. These discussions are unfolding against the backdrop of a regional visit by US Vice President J.D. Vance to Armenia and Azerbaijan later this month. Joining me now to discuss this is Associate Professor Orkan Valiev, Head of Department of Kaiser University. Welcome this morning.
Pleasure.
First, I want to discuss a number of things, but I think the first thing that really is to focus on is there's increasing talk about preparing Armenia's economy for more structured interaction with Azerbaijan. What do you think are the concrete steps that the government needs to envisage and move through, and how would that impact its already limited but growing economic contacts between Azerbaijan and Armenia?
It seems that the Armenian side is starts to implement the outcomes of the Washington summit. Because as we know, the main outcomes that came out in Washington, and then they initiated a draft peace agreement, and then that gave such a promises that President Aliyev mentioned that we want to leave our promises that we did here. So this is, and also the economic integration that must be on the table in order to facilitate integration between two countries, because it seems that yes, the peace is an inevitable solution, specifically in terms of the uncertainty of the global politics. We need it, we are being surrounded the different kinds of the conflicts, Iran or Ukraine and so on. So therefore, the peace must be on the table. So we have actually done many issues. For example, both side delegations visited countries. Maybe we will see in the next visits in this year. I don't know. But economy is just a strategic version, because if you don't have economic integration, so the political and diplomatic the success achievements will be just nonsense. So therefore, Azerbaijan starts to export oil products through Georgia to Armenia, and that has been mentioned by Armenian officials, including Foreign Minister and Prime Minister as well. And also Azerbaijan opened its border, sending just the products of grain and other goods from the territory of Azerbaijan to Armenia, that has been mentioned by the Armenian officials as well. I think we will see the main conclusions on the ground through these the economic implementation. And also, we have the TRIP, the another issue. So therefore, the economic integration that must be on the table, and I think this is the positive momentum from Armenian side towards the normalization process. The normalization process could have different kinds of aspects. First, of course, the political and diplomatic connection that we have in 2 times in Abu Dhabi, Washington, and so on. But economies, we cannot imagine the implementation of the outcomes of the Washington summit in terms of the finalization of the peace without economic integration. This is what has been mentioned by the Armenian officials. This is a positive momentum.
Right. Okay. So in that sense, I just want to just hone in on what you said in regards to the TRIP project, because we've seen signs of accelerated work in regards to the Trump route for peace and prosperity, but coinciding with the regional visit that Vice President J.D. Vance will be coming to this region. What concrete outcomes should we expect from this phase?
Implementation of TRIP or Zangezur corridor anyway is just great initiative, came from Azerbaijan right after the Second Karabakh War. We are being witnessed the transformation of trade routes from the east to the west anyway. So this is just an initiative that came from the Baku that to involve Azerbaijan, the South Caucasus to the international global trade route. So this is great achievement that the United States involved this project. Through the names of the TRIP, right? And the visiting of the Vice President Vance is another, the huge the step for the future of the region, entire region. The last one, high level of visiting, was, if I'm not mistaken, many years ago, maybe more than 15 years ago. But it was different context. But now it's different context, so not just diplomatic ties, and also they will discuss economic integration, economic process implementation of the TRIP road. I think this is quite enough different context, because we used to just witness the different kinds of visits, the way they discuss the diplomatic issues, political issues, but now we will have an opportunity to discuss the implementation of TRIP, which is just equals the economy.
Right. And the Armenian government has also indicated that work on the new constitutional draft is advancing. When should we expect the text to be finalised and for information to be handed out in regards to that?
Yes, this is another the issue that Azerbaijan has a certain requirements which is based on international law recognition of its territorial integrity. But however, there is the point that President Aliyev said that in an interview we can see the implementation of the TRIP road or Zangezur corridor maybe in 2028. So it seems that yes, there is not just a local, regional agreement and also international agreements. They initiated the draft agreement, draft peace agreement in Washington, so involved the United States. So therefore, I think that there is a certain positive momentum in advancing relations. So in advancing relation is based on the Armenian the constitutional amendments. So I think we will see. I'm positive to that issue. So I think we will see the certain the amendments. I don't know how to say the concrete the points, but that will facilitate the implementation of the trade route and also the finalization peace agreement between two countries. Because the both leaders was in Abu Dhabi just wasn't days ago. So the President Aliyev said that we have been living in peacetime since 6 months. So this is quite enough. So that important. The parallel to that, the Pashinyan said that in an interview in the United States, right after the Washington summit, that we don't know to live in terms of Armenian society. We don't know to live in peace and to work in peace. I think the both sides understood this strategic importance, so specifically in terms of uncertainty of the global politics. So therefore, I think of course it won't be easy, because we are discussing the transformation of over the last 200s, the political and military establishments that came from the Russian Empire time. So anyway, so of course it won't be easy, but it will be done.
You mentioned that it's going to be roughly 2028, which is 2 years from now. Do you think that's too long in regards to Armenia is also going through elections later on?
It was just roughly. So maybe it will be early. I don't know. But my position is that yes, that statement was enough to say that yes, we will be able to see the positive momentum in terms of constitutional amendments in Armenia. Right. So, this is actually the process has already become the global issue. So, for example, they were in Abu Dhabi and awarded nominated right to the certain the laureate. So there were and also the vice president visit to the region. It's not a small issue; it's a huge issue. Yes. So therefore, I'm positive, and I think that we will be able to see the positive steps that will facilitate the finalization peace agreement to the countries.
Great. And then the Cabinet also discussed amendments to the law on the state treaties regarding it as a critical technical step. The government is said to be preparing legislation to fast track for a potential final peace treaty. What are your thoughts in regards to that?
Actually, from Armenian side, it's not easy, and because over the last 3 decades, they integrate in the wrong way. We know what was that the situation, invasion, also one. So they designed the constitutional the background or just jurisdiction background in terms of different the way. So, but now it's time to make change. That. Such kind of change amendments will not just bring the peace agreement, also will bring prosperity for the entire region, including Armenia, which is under the blockades, for example. So the change the basis of the jurisdiction and also constitutional amendments that will define the future of the implementation of the Washington outcomes. Over the last 5 years, the both sides discussed in terms of different platforms, and also they had the Abu Dhabi bilateral meetings. But however, the final points of this process was in Washington summits that President Aliyev repeatedly mentioned its strategic importance. So therefore, over the last 6 months, we started to witness implementation of outcomes of the Washington summit. Therefore, President Aliyev said that we have been living in peacetime since 6 months. So living in peacetime, it means that yes, we started to experience economic cooperation. So the delegations visit both countries. So they opened the borders, and also maybe we will be able to discuss the opening borders with Turkey and Armenia as well, which of course Turkey has a certain the points in terms of the recognition of Azerbaijan territorial agreement. But however, they accepted that yes, the both sides has already the positive momentum. So this is, I think, the huge the momentum for the entire region.
And do you think everything is going in the right direction then in regards to the momentum, things coming together, infrastructure, planning, the constitution as well that needs to be finalised because of the importance of the US influence in the region and because of JD Vance coming over and the trip route?
Actually, President Aliyev said that. clarified and identified the involvement of the United States contribution and its importance. You know, and also I think the great initiatives came from Baku right after the Second Karabakh War, and the 5 years process involved the United States to the process in terms of the implementation of Zengezur corridor in the name of the Tree Road, for example. So I think quite enough important, strategic important.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Valia, for talking to me this morning and for informing our audience. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Now, one of the world's largest defence industry events has brought scores of countries together, focusing on cutting-edge military technologies and growing global security challenges. Our reporter Nurai Mustafa has more.
The World Defence Show and International Defence Industry Exhibition opens today in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The event covers land, air, sea, space and security sectors, bringing together leading defence companies, government officials and industrial leaders from around the world. The World Defence Show attracts global attention. This year, over the 76 countries are participating, with more than 773 exhibitors showcasing their products and technologies. The event is expected to welcome over 106,000 visitors, 441 international delegations, and 954 accredited media representatives. Participants include companies and official bodies from the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Turkey, Azerbaijan, South Korea, Japan, China, the UAE, and other countries across Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Key highlights of the exhibition include unmanned aerial and ground systems, armored vehicles, missile and radar systems, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and autonomous technologies. The event also provides extensive opportunities for high-level official meetings, bilateral talks, and strategic partnerships. The World Defence Show is regarded as one of the most prestigious international platforms for showcasing innovative technologies, fostering international cooperation, and discussing the future of the global defence industry. Nuray Mustafa and Zohrab Shirinov for A News, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Greek Prime Minister will visit Turkey on Wednesday. He will take part in the 6th meeting of the High-Level Cooperation Council between the two countries, Turkish officials say. Discussions will focus on expanding cooperation and reviewing bilateral relations too. The Arab League is celebrating its 80th anniversary in Beijing to showcase growing ties with China. Secretary General Ahmed Habul Ghit said the event highlights 2 decades of close political and economic cooperation between the Arab world and China. He expressed hope that many Arab leaders would attend and that the partnership would continue to strengthen for years to come.
We made the choice of China for the cooperation that we have had with the Chinese over the last 20 years. Arab League and China established a kind of a forum of cooperation in 2004. So it is already 21 years. A ministerial meeting between the foreign minister of China and all the Arab foreign ministers once every 2 years. We have had also in 22 in December in Saudi Arabia, the first Arab summit. We will be having the 2nd Arab summit in Beijing 26. So we find easiness in the cooperation with China, and the Chinese are reciprocating to our friendship. So we are working together.
Pakistani authorities have arrested 4 people on Saturday, a day after a suicide bomber killed at least 32 people at a mosque in Islamabad. Pakistan's Interior Minister said the suspects included the alleged mastermind were detained. 1 counter-terrorism officer was killed and 3 others wounded during the operations. The attack claimed by the Islamic State targeted a mosque on the outskirts of the capital and injured more than 170 people.
Immediately after the blast, raids were conducted in Peshawar and Nowshera, and 4 facilitators were arrested. The most important development is the mastermind who belongs to Daesh, Islamic State. Afghanistan has also been arrested. Our one ASI, Assistant Sub-Inspector from KPK Police, was killed during this raid last night. Some of our personnel were also wounded. However, the main mastermind who belongs to Daesh, Islamic State, is in our custody.
Staying on this tragic story, the families of the victims gathered at a hospital in Islamabad after Friday's suicide attack. World leaders and the United Nations have condemned the violence and voiced support for Pakistan. Here's more.
At Islamabad's largest public hospital, families waited through the night in packed corridors, searching for news of loved ones injured in one of the deadliest attacks the capital has seen in years.
They went inside the mosque to offer Friday prayers. The blast occurred and he is critically injured, and my nephew's son has been martyred. He is in the operating theatre.
Officials say the attacker opened fire at the mosque entrance before detonating explosives inside the Khadija Tul Kubra Imambarga compound on the outskirts of Islamabad. Survivors described hearing gunfire moments before the blast.
At first there was gunfire, 5, 6 fires, then there was a silence. After 15, 20 seconds there was an explosion. Chaos took place after the blast. People were running here and there. I did not feel I was hit because my back became numb. I came to know later that my back was hit as I came out.
The Islamic State group later claimed responsibility for the attack, which targeted Pakistan's Shiite minority. Sectarian violence has repeatedly hit the community in the past. The attack has been widely condemned by world leaders. The United Nations, Russia, China, Turkey, Iran and several European countries denounced the attack and expressed solidarity with Pakistan. Canada and Australia offered condolences, while the United States said Pakistanis should be able to practice their faith without fear and reaffirmed its commitment to the country's stability and security. Many leaders reaffirmed support for Pakistan's fight against terrorism and stressed the need for international cooperation to bring those responsible to justice.
Turkey is strengthening its science diplomacy in Antarctica. It's part of its 10th National Antarctic Scientific Expedition. Turkish scientists have visited multiple foreign research bases, highlighting Ankara's growing role in international scientific cooperation on the frozen continent.
On the frozen edge of Antarctica, Turkish researchers are moving from one foreign laboratory to another, not as visitors, but as collaborators. As part of Turkey's 10th National Antarctic Scientific Expedition, the team is stepping inside research stations run by Chile, Russia, South Korea, China, and Bulgaria, comparing data, sharing infrastructure, and exploring joint projects in one of the world's harshest environments. Here, cooperation matters as much as discovery. Scientific diplomacy unfolds quietly through shared experiments, joint fieldwork, and trust built far from capitals. One moment captured that spirit. At Chile's Professor Julio Escudero Bas on King George Island, the Turkish flag was raised during a year marking 100 years of diplomatic relations between Turkey and Chile, linking polar science with a century of bilateral ties. For Turkish researchers, Antarctica is more than ice and data points. It is a place where long-distance diplomacy happens quietly through shared experiments, joint fieldwork, and trust built far from capitals. Say Turkey plans to continue expanding its scientific presence on the continent in the years ahead.
On Sunday, general elections were held in Thailand to determine the new composition of the House of Representatives. Early results show Prime Minister Aungtan Chanvikarul's party emerging as the largest force, putting him in the strong position to remain in office. Here's more.
Thai Prime Minister Anutin Chanvirakul's Bumjai Thai party won a decisive victory in weekend snap elections, clearing the way for him to remain in office. With around 90% of the ballots counted, unofficial results showed the party securing close to 200 of the 500 seats in the lower house of parliament. This result is making it the single largest party in the chamber. The party, however, is still short of the 251 seats required to form a government on its own.
Our hard works and our determination that we have all been working for our beloved country, despite having not long period of time in our administration, but all the problems that would put Thailand to risk, we have had the right people to tackle all those problems. And we think Thailand is now in a steady state and look forward to moving on with even stronger cabinet and government.
The Progressive People's Party has won 110 seats and is leading in another 5 constituencies, while the populist Pheu Thai Party, backed by former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, has won 80 seats, the results showed. The election was called in December after the coalition, led by Anutin, collapsed after just 3 months. Alongside the election, Thais also voted in a referendum on whether to reform the 2017 constitution, which was drafted under military rule in 2017. Around 60%, or 18.41 million people, voting in favour of such a move.
Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš has voiced support for banning the use of social media networks for children under the age of 15. Babiš said the measure is intended to protect children's well-being from online risks. The proposal mirrors recent moves abroad, including France, which last month passed a law restricting social media access for under 15-year-olds. It's now time for a break. When I return, I'll have a full update on the latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the pages this morning. Stay with us. Good morning and thank you for joining me on Daybreak. If you're just tuning in, I'm your host Nadia Jani, taking you through the day's top stories. Here are the headlines. Japan's stock market surge after Sanai Takaichi's landslide win. Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai is sentenced to 20 years in prison. And 9 people are killed and several injured after a building collapse in Lebanon. Now let's take a look at the stories shaping the day across the globe, and we head first to the Guardian website, which is referring to Jimmy Lai's sentencing, which has just happened in the past hour and a half. So what we know is that he has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. It's based on 3 security charges comprising of 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and 1 of publishing seditious materials. Now the 78-year-old has denied all charges against him, saying that he is a political prisoner facing persecution from Beijing. The Hong Kong court said that Lai's sentence was the most severe penalty ban for offences of a grave nature, and that it was enhanced by him being the mastermind and driving force behind foreign collusion and conspiracies. Now, there's been quite a few responses to his sentencing today, one coming from the Committee to Protect Journalism in Hong Kong, and they say the rule of law has been completely shattered in Hong Kong. Today's egregious decision is the final nail in the coffin for freedom of press in Hong Kong. And another from the Human Rights Watch said the harsh 20-year sentence against 78-year-old Jimmy Lai is effectively a death sentence. A sentence of this magnitude is both cruel and profoundly unjust. And here is we're showing you exactly how the information came out today on The Guardian. And just to remind people from at home, he was the founder of the now closed pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily, and he was arrested back in 2020 after China imposed a national security law following massive anti-government protests in Hong Kong. His actual arrest and plight has been criticised by a number of world leaders, including the US and UK British Prime Minister Keir Starmer as well. Okay, we'll now shoot over to the next headline, also making waves, and that's on the BBC, and it's stating PM's chief aide McSweeney quits over Mandelson row. So if we remember, if I just take your minds back to the beginning of last week when the Epstein files were released, it follows on from that because we found out that there was more collusion and information in regards to Peter Mandelson's connections to Jeffrey Epstein, who was a convicted sex offender who's now passed away. Now, what we understand is that Keir Starmer's chief top aide here on my left, your right, has now decided to resign because it was him that actually provided Keir Starmer with information to want to actually select and employ Mandelson for that role. So Mandelson was actually the US ambassador from the UK to the US ambassador, and Morgan McSweeney was the one who kind of cheered and voted him in, wanting him to actually get that role. He's now decided to resign, saying that it was wrong, and added that it had damaged the part of the Labour Party and the country and trust in politics itself. He put out a statement on Sunday, McSweeney, and said that Lord Mandelson's appointment in December 2024 had been wrong, adding that it had damaged the party as well. So his departure could also be quite a thorn in Keir Starmer's side in regards to his premiership as Prime Minister to the UK, as a lot of Labour MPs are calling for a no confidence vote that could come to fruition. But right now, Keir Starmer is holding on to hit the reins of the Labour Party right now. But what we do also know is that McSweeney said that he did not oversee the vetting process, but wanted to take full responsibility. Okay, then we head to CNBC's website, and it talks about Japan and its elections there. So what we know is that stocks jumped as markets opened this morning on Monday, and it's a sweeping result. Media outlets called Sanai Takaichi's landslide election win a historical one, and it's had actually a good outcome on the stock market as we are reading reports coming through. Her Liberal Democratic Party won 316 of the 465 seats in Parliament's lower house, giving her the mandate to push through her spending plans and promise tax relief. Takaichi, she called a snap election to secure a mandate that she could push through with very limited opposition, which is why she did it. And the election took place during Japan's very cold winter snap, and which many people decided to obviously come out and vote regardless of the weather conditions in order to make sure that their vote was counted. Okay, and now moving over to our top story, which is this top story in regards to Japan's, which some are calling Iron Lady Sanai Takaichi, winning Japan elections secures a strong mandate. Our report goes into more detail. Let's take a look.
Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi coalition has won an historic landslide in Sunday's snap election, securing one of the strongest mandates in the country's post-war history. She delivered 316 seats of the 465 in Parliament's lower house for her Liberal Democratic Party, its best ever result. The win gives the party about 68% of the chamber. It is the first time a single party has achieved a two-thirds majority in Japan's lower house. Japanese media have described the result as an historic victory. The victory paves the way for promised tax cuts that have spooked financial markets and military spending aimed at countering China, a strong stance that has strained ties with her powerful neighbour. However, the main concerns with voters are rising living costs and sluggish economic growth.
I do support the Liberal Democratic Party, but I do have some concerns about them winning too much. For the government going forward, I hope they tighten their discipline, don't get complacent, and run the administration without any looseness.
I think it's a good thing that people who value Japan were elected. Her popularity was part of it.
Takaichi became Prime Minister in October after taking over leadership of the LDP, becoming the first female leader in the country. She called the snap vote to seek a clear mandate after the party lost its parliamentary majority under her predecessors. Financial markets reacted sharply to the result. Japanese stocks surged to record highs, while government bonds fell. The Nikkei 225 rose as much as 4.2% during trading, hitting an all-time high. The broader Topix index also climbed to a record level.
Staying on this topic, I'm now joined by Professor Sujiro Takeshita, and he is professor at the University of Shizuoka City in Japan. Welcome to the program again. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Right, we spoke to you on Friday, well I spoke to you on Friday, in regards to the elections, and now we have the result, and Sanae Takaichi has made a landslide win, as polls expected. Now she clearly did the right thing in regarding the snap elections and overachieved her goal. What do you think is now going to be her #1 item on her agenda, and how will she achieve that? Because there's now a lot of hope and expectation for her in regards to the win.
Well, #1 positive side is obviously continuation of her policies now, which is now much easier to go through. And expansion of fiscal policy is what she's thinking about. And basically, passing those legislation much easier because of this absolute majority. And this is what we wanted. And that's the reason why the market shot up. But her concern, the negative side, is of course the inflationary conditions, especially which could be accommodated by further weakening the yen because of our current fiscal position. And it'd be a very difficult one to tackle because she's basically also trying to reduce a consumption tax on food side. But we are not really clear about how she's going to obtain the funds for that, et cetera, et cetera. So, she has a lot of difficult road ahead, a bit of an oxymoron type of situation that is facing her right now as we speak.
And let's turn to Trump, because he's congratulated her on his Truth social media site, wishing her great success. We know that he also endorsed her on Thursday on social media as well. What does her win mean for the US and Japan relations alongside the upcoming meeting that the two leaders are going to have in March?
Very positive, I would say. For that is that US is currently asking Japan to strengthen, our defense, particularly against China. And we will be increasing our defense spending, and that's one of the reasons why many of the defense-related shares have shot up today. And it will be up of GDP. Now, overseas media tend to report, and media as well, consider this as a very right-wing regression, but 2% GDP is way lower than 5% target in Europe or elsewhere. And again, this is not an aggressive increase, but potential joint coalition to fight off the aggression that we're getting from China. So the general public in Japan is very concerned about this. And for that reason, to have a very firm stance like Ms. Takaichi is considered very positive and reliable by the Japanese.
Yes, definitely. To have US on side is showing to be a very positive thing. Yeah. Now let's turn to the markets, which have responded favourably to the party's win. What does this mean for the Japanese market and beyond?
Well, it's a lot more clear about what is going to happen, which is all the expansion of fiscal policies, all these policies that she's announced, 20 trillion yen, how that's going to pass through, what kind of economic, I would say, multiplier it would imply. We can put that scenario in a much more clear and straightforward way, because until now, as you reported, LDP did not have the majority. So basically, they had to confer and get the coalition from each and every opposition in order to pass those laws through. But now, it's clear. At the same time, you can clearly see that Ms. Takaichi is very straightforward, clear about her policies, which basically shows a much better direction of where we're going. So again, for the market, it's much easier to estimate or guesstimate, where we're going from here onwards.
Yes, having a clear idea of where Japan can, land and state where it's going is very helpful. Now, I just want to quickly turn to one of your neighbours, just in regards to China. I just want to find out, how do you think China will respond to this, especially in light of what Takaichi said last year in relation to Taiwan, and Japan's defence minister also told told TV stations on Sunday evening that he wanted to push ahead with policies to strengthen Japan's defense while pursuing dialogue with China. Do you think we will see this as a bolstered premiership or as a thorn in their side or something to work through?
Well, the reaction of China, anybody which is not excessively pro-China, the previous, regime, which had been excessively, pro and much more to the left wing in a very negative way, and that's one of the reasons why the public were being very much anxious about the moves. Now, Takaichi will definitely correct that move, and that it would be considered positive. Now, China will always, criticize her policies and her regime's policy while having a threat. You ask, a threat, and then that's the, the colloquialism they come up with. What kind of does Japan has to other, Asian nations, neighboring nations? Nobody will tell you that Japan is actually a threat. But they will tactics, and they'll use that propaganda to criticize her policies. But again, unlike the right-wing movement in Europe, she's not the right wing. That is, she's very much in the middle of the road. We've been too much on the left, and that is another very big reason why, LDP has had this landslide victory, because over in Japan, Japanese are very much concerned and worried about, where we're going on the security side.
Great. My last question also, so Sanai Takaichi, she did some local TV interviews and she pledged to speed up deliberation for suspending by 2 years an 8% levy on food sales without issuing new debt to fund the measure. Is this good news for the Japanese people, and can this actually be implemented? Are there any hurdles to that?
I personally don't think that it would really expand or support, the lives of the normal Japanese. Of course, tax cut might be, a very positive issue, but where is she going to get the funding for that is still very unclear. She does make some kind of limiting, temporary measures, which I think is a bit realistic. Then she would have to revert the 8% back in 2 or 4 years' time, which would be very difficult. And for that, that measure is considered to be a little bit wishy-washy, to say the least. And but that was one of the things that she utilized in order to attract the voters by showing that she does care about the levels of everyday lives of Japanese who is starting to suffer from inflationary fears.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Takeshita. That's been great to have you and to go through some of the things she will be facing now that she's got the majority in the lower house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Japan wasn't the only place having elections. We turn to Thailand, who also had elections on Sunday, and early results show that Prime Minister Atun Shan Vikaral's party emerging as the largest force, putting him in a strong position to remain in office. Here's more.
Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul's Bumjai Thai party won a decisive victory in weekend snap elections, clearing the way for him to remain in office. With around 90% of the ballots counted, unofficial results showed the party securing close to 200 of the 500 seats in the lower house of parliament. This result is making it the single largest party in the chamber. The party, however, is still short of the 251 seats required to form a government on its own.
Our hard works and our determination that we have all been working for our beloved country, despite having not long period of time in our administration, but all the problems that would put Thailand to risk, we have had the right people to tackle all those problems. And we think Thailand is now in a steady state and look forward to moving on with even stronger cabinet and government.
The Progressive People's Party has won 110 seats and is leading in another 5 constituencies, while the populist Pheu Thai Party backed by former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, has won 80 seats, the results showed. The election was called in December after the coalition, led by Anutin, collapsed after just 3 months. Alongside the election, Thais also voted in a referendum on whether to reform the 2017 constitution, which was drafted under military rule in 2017. Around 60%, or 18.41 million people, voting in favour of such a move.
A Hong Kong court has sentenced prominent media tycoon Jimmy Lai to 20 years in prison. It's the harshest sentence to be given under the controversial national security law, which China says is necessary for the city's stability. Here's more.
Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai has been sentenced to a total of 20 years in jail on 3 charges. These comprise of 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and 1 count of publishing seditious materials. The 78-year-old self-made billionaire is among the highest-profile government critics to be charged since Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law on the semi-autonomous southern city in 2020. He was first arrested in August that year. Lai, also a British citizen and founder of the now-closed Apple Daily newspaper, was convicted on the 15th of December last year on all 3 counts. He denies all charges. He told the court he is a political prisoner facing persecution from Beijing. The sentence is likely to galvanise international calls for the media mogul's release in a landmark trial closely watched by Western leaders, including US President Donald Trump, who previously vowed to get him out. Supporters of the Hong Kong democracy activist queued outside the court in hopes of catching a last glimpse of Lai as he arrived for sentencing.
I started queuing at 8 p.m. last Thursday. I just wish to greet Mr. Lai in person in court. That's all I ask for because I think it will be the last time I see him.
2 years of Lai's sentence will overlap with his existing prison term, meaning he will serve an additional 18 years. However, he will not be eligible for parole until he is in his late 90s. Both Beijing and Hong Kong's government have repeatedly rejected international criticism of Lai's prosecution and dismissed accusations that his jailing was politically motivated.
Over to Lebanon, where a multi-storey apartment building collapsed on Sunday in the northern city of Tripoli, killing at least half a dozen people. The incident has raised concerns about unsafe housing in the area. Rescue teams continue to work at the site, with authorities warning that many buildings remain at risk.
Rescue teams continue to search for 8 people believed to be missing after a multi-storey apartment building collapsed in the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli on Sunday. At least 9 people have been killed and dozens injured. 6 people have been rescued from the rubble so far. Civil Defense Director General Imad Kreish said the building was made up of 2 blocks, each containing 6 apartments. He said 22 people were inside at the time of the collapse. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun ordered all emergency services to remain on high alert. He also instructed authorities to provide shelter for residents of nearby buildings. The collapse comes just weeks after another deadly building disaster in Tripoli. In January, the head of the Higher Relief Authority, Bassam Nablusi, said Tripoli municipality records showed that 105 buildings needed immediate evacuation warnings. Lebanon has many derelict buildings, with some occupied structures in serious disrepair. Many were built illegally during the 1975 to 1990 civil war, while others had extra floors added without permits.
You're watching Daybreak on A News with me, Nadia Jani. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. Now let's turn to our weekly roundup of tech news. called Switch. Now, a clever robot dog is helping to predict when there might be a volcano eruption on Mount Etna in Italy. And Agricultural Solutions gets a number of nods at a web summit in Doha. Our reporter Nathan Kamanga reports.
Predicting a volcanic eruption has always been a dangerous game of how close can you get. Now, researchers at ETH Zurich think they have found the answer, and it walks on 4 legs. Introducing Animal, a quadruped robot dog capable of sniffing out gases and using artificial intelligence to learn to navigate unstable terrains.
The problem is if we want to send people, it's very logistically challenging as well as hazardous, since we have toxic gases there, we have very unstable terrain, and for this we want to use robots instead.
That was Julia Richter, who's a PhD student at ETH Zurich. Her team recently took Animal on the slopes of Italy's Mount Etna, where it managed to successfully detect 5 out of 8 gas sources all on its own, around 100% of the time in field tests. The robo-dog is equipped with a mass spectrometer, which is a very powerful tool that can measure various kinds of gases. Although further tests are planned, it's a literal first step towards a future where we can monitor Earth's most violent peaks without ever putting a human life on the line. Finally, in Doha, the capital of Qatar, we bring you the latest details from the just concluded 2026 Web Summit. So right off the bat, let's talk fogponics. Now stay with me. An Ottawa-based startup called Plantiform has won the Pitch Startup competition for using the technology to develop cutting-edge agriculture solutions. The company's indoor pods, or gardens, are set to enable households to grow fresh herbs, greens, and vegetables all year round without soil or sunlight. It uses a mist-based method that delivers water and nutrients directly to the plant's roots as an ultrasonic fog, significantly reducing water use while accelerating plant growth. Co-founder Alberto Aguila said the smart indoor gardens are becoming a common household appliance and that the technology is being scaled up for commercial use. Qatar's government, meanwhile, has announced a massive boost in the country's venture capital program, bringing it to a whopping $3 billion. The Web Summit also broke its own record with over 30,000 attendees and over 1,500 startups, making it the biggest tech event of the region so far. Catch up with us for more tech news and insights on the next show.
Turning to one of the most anticipated US sports events this year, and that's the Super Bowl. And if you're just tuning in, we have the results. The Seahawks have beaten the New England Patriots 29-13 for their second Super Bowl win. Alongside this, Puerto Rican rapper Bad Bunny delivered his halftime performance with hit songs and a few surprise celebrity appearances. The Grammy winner highlighted his Puerto Rican roots, marking a spectacular moment for Latin music on America's biggest stage, while Lady Gaga and Ricky Martin graced the stage to join the 31-year-old. But not everyone was excited to see his performance after facing criticism from US President Donald Trump and other conservatives over his outspoken criticism of US immigration policy. Looks very energetic and colourful. I would have loved to be in the stands watching that live. But anyway, we move on to a decade-old cherry blossom tradition near Japan's Mount Fuji, which has been cancelled after authorities said tourist behaviour had become unmanageable. Here's more on that report.
A decade-old cherry blossom tradition in a Japanese city has been cancelled after authorities said tourist behaviour around Mount Fuji had become unmanageable. Officials in Fuji Yoshida, west of Tokyo, said the annual event at Arakurayama Sengen Park will not take place this spring. The park is one of Japan's most iconic cherry blossom sites, known worldwide for its view of Mount Fuji, framed by pink blossoms and the Chureito Pagoda. City leaders said soaring visitor numbers have led to overcrowding, litter, traffic congestion, and repeated cases of tourists trespassing in residential areas. Some residents reported visitors entering private homes to use toilets, while parents raised safety concerns as crowds spilled onto school routes. Mayor Shigeru Horiuchi said the scale of tourism had reached a breaking point, warning that the quiet lives and dignity of local residents were under threat. During peak blossom season, more than 10,000 people a day visit the city, fueled by a weak yen and the viral spread of Mount Fuji images on social media. Despite the festival's cancellation, officials expect large crowds to continue arriving, as Arakurayama Sengen Park itself will remain open. Authorities say additional security, temporary parking and portable toilets will be put in place to manage the influx.
Cherry blossoms are very beautiful during that time, and it's a shame that that's been cancelled now. Thank you so much for watching Daybreak with me. I'll be back tomorrow to take you through the latest updates throughout the morning. Make sure you stay watching A News and take care.